Hey everyone, and welcome back to MGAC Inner Voices and podcasting into the issues of diversity, equity, inclusion in the AAC industry. I always want to preface this by letting everyone know that I'm not an expert in all things diversity, equity, inclusion, nor is our guest. We're just sharing our stories and how together we can create a better environment and outcome for everyone in the AAC industry and beyond. I'm Bryan Gamez. I'm a project manager here at MGAC, working and living in Los Angeles. And today we are talking with Miss Monica Taylor. And I'm just so excited to have you on the podcast today, Monica. Do you want to do a brief introduction of who you are?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Brian. I'm excited as well. Monica Taylor. I'm the Director of Project Controls. My office I'm based out of is San Francisco. Been with the company since the beginning of May. So far, I
Yes,
love it. The
a
people are
newbie.
amazing. I am a newbie. I am, but not to the industry.
No.
I've been around for a few decades now, let's just
She's been
say.
around the block. That's okay.
That's all right. We can definitely say that. But a lot has happened, and I've seen a lot of change in those almost 30 years, and I can't wait to get into it with you. It's going to be great.
Yeah. We met a few months ago when you did a lunch and learn about project controls. I just was so struck by how you communicated your communication style. And
Thank
everyone, I
you.
told I told Monica, I was like, this is the best lunch and learn I've ever had.
Thank
And it
you,
was
Brian.
and that was
Thank
a very
you.
genuine compliment. And then I realized once we got started talking, your story is just so interesting. We'll get into it, but you have been in construction since 1996. You were a stay-at-home mom and you were in the military. I have family members in the military. So I want to thank you for your service to our country. So
Oh, you're welcome.
there are so many groups that you represent. Let's talk about it.
I am a Navy veteran, so it's a branch. It's the Navy, the one and only. I joined the Navy right out of high school. Had some scholarships to college, but decided military was for me. I wanted something new, something different. And so I joined the Navy and I was an aviation electronic technician. I was training to be down in NAS Miramar, not too far from where you're located, Brian, just south of you. In 88, I had my first son. He was a twin. I miscarried his twin
Mhm.
and ended up having to leave the military at this point in time. I was a stay-at-home mom at that point and stayed home and worked off and on throughout the spell as a
Mhm.
bartender, waitress, anything to help make ends meet.
Mhm.
And then in 96, I got into the construction industry. Didn't think it was going to be my route, but that's where I went.
You have a large family too now, right?
Yes, I do. I have 4 children that are mine, 3 stepchildren, and 9 grandchildren. And I have to say, extremely happy to be a noni. That's what I'm called, is noni. I'm Italian, so it makes sense. But my grandchildren and my children are my world. And my husband is the bomb. He's amazing. He was my first love in junior high.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
You're a superwoman. You're a grandma. You've done it all. You touched everything. How was it going from, the Navy, stay-at-home mom, and then into construction? Because you've already been part of a very that environment to go to be in the Navy, the military, right?
Right.
And then to go into construction. What was that environment at that time? And you said that you started out in Reno, Nevada.
Yes, I did. I, for the most part, grew up in Reno, Nevada, went to high school there, but I moved from Portland, Oregon. But Reno, Nevada, people know it as the biggest little city in the world. And in all honesty, it is a very small town mentality. Construction, primarily, back then, it was a male industry. You did not see women in the arena at all unless they were in an administrative task. And when I stepped foot into construction, when I started back then, my ex-husband at the time and I worked for the same company, and I started off in the office. I started doing the administrative tasks. I would start doing takeoffs, doing estimates. Thankfully, my boss at the time became my greatest mentor I've ever had, and I'm going to mention him. He's since passed. His name was Bob Gorell, and he believed in me.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It was amazing, but it was a hard transition. Men were back then were especially in the area were very this is a man's world. I
Yeah.
don't know enough. Even though I grew up in construction, I mean, my whole life, my first hard hat was when I was 4. I've always been around it. My family are builders. That's what they do. So it just seemed natural to me at that time. I picked it up really quick.
I'm really happy that you had that mentor because even today, it's hard for a lot of women in these environments still. So I couldn't even imagine what type of environment you may have faced in the 90s. Talk about your mentor, what he like allowed you to really see in yourself.
I always used to chuckle at him because Bob was such an amazing individual. He and I bonded over NASCAR.
That's awesome.
And and it grew, but he believed in me that I had the capability. He invested in me, paid for, I took some introductory courses in school that he paid for. So I could step in there and help him with estimating, to help him with material and running projects and dispersing the guys out in the field. My ex-husband was one of those ones. And he backed me up when others in the industry said, Bob, what are you doing? Why? And he's like, no, Monica, she's quick. She gets it. She understands it. She understands. She's a builder. She understands the process.
Did you ever hear those questions asked? Wait,
Oh,
if you were you
yes.
around?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They would literally, and I would be in a room. I would say, well, so and so, we could give you this and that. And I'm talking to Bob, and just cut me off. And Bob would say, no, Monica can tell you, she knows. But that had happened, periodically throughout the beginning stages of my career, where getting a foothold in the industry as a female is extremely hard. And even today, to some extent, thankfully I see a lot more women in the industry now than I did back then.
Do you think that it's more accepting of women and also minorities here now?
I think the younger generation has made it so.
Mm.
I think if a lot of my generation and the generation that preceded me was so old school, I ran into a lot of old timers back in the day that said a woman's place is in her home, raising her children and taking
Oh
care of
my
the house.
God.
That was the mentality I had run into a lot.
That can be so detrimental to your psyche. And
Yes.
so you learned how to stand up for yourself and you grew a very thick skin.
I had to. I didn't have a choice. I really
Yeah.
loved what I was doing. I really loved the fact that I was always learning something new. And if anybody really knows me,
Yeah.
and I know some of your listeners, that will listen when they know me, I love to learn. And so I was soaking everything up, and I knew that if I was going to get anywhere, that I really needed to stand up for myself and what
Mhm.
I believed in, and speak up for what was right, regardless of what the outcome might be. And a lot of women and a lot of people just in general, when they're spoken down to, I call it belittling. You know, you're
Mhm.
when somebody does that, they're trying to make themselves bigger by making you a smaller. And I've never been able to stand for it. It upsets me, even if it's not directed at me, but at somebody
Yeah.
else. To me, the people that do that, that was a learned environment. They learned those,
Right.
or
You did say
they
that.
have their own insecurities. So I don't, in my youth, I would have jumped on it and just gone off on the person. But over the years, I've learned that I don't know what brought them to where they're at. So maybe I can help educate them and say, hey, you don't know what that person's going through. You don't know what their experience is, and you're judging them just by sex, gender, whatever the
Whatever.
case may
Yeah.
be. And that's just wrong. You can't judge somebody by looks, sexual orientation. You have to judge them on merit, on who they are. And that's why I always tell people, be yourself.
It's interesting. You approach the situation with compassion.
Yeah,
You or
I do
almost,
now.
yeah, now. And so I also want to get into how you've shifted over the years because you said that you were more assertive when you were younger.
Yes.
And now you are also a mentor to
Yeah.
so many women and to so many people in the industry. I mean, I can already attest to that. We've known each other for a few months, but you have allowed, if I ask questions, you are there to help me out. And That makes a work environment so amazing. And you're in a different office. And that's what's so
Yeah.
great about MGAC. We can be in different offices, but we're still really people are still readily available.
We're
How
one team.
Yeah, we are one team. So how has it been being a mentor now? And then how have you grown over that period? And when did you realize you had to change your approach?
Well, I've always had mentors. Even after Bob passed away, I've had about 4 or 5 really great mentors throughout my career.
Mhm.
And
That's great.
yeah,
So many different
amazing.
perspectives.
Well,
You learn a lot.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And when I would do something, I wanted that honest, raw feedback on my performance,
Mhm.
my communication skills. You never stop learning. I don't care how old a person is, don't stop
Right.
because there's so many things out there that you could still learn. And I knew, and it when I wanted to advance my career, when I wanted to move forward, mind you, I've had to fight for every advancement I've had. It was just never, hey, you've earned it. Hey, we're making you XYZ. It's, and what I'm doing, folks, is I'm holding up my hands as an example. It's like in one side, these are the list of things I'm doing.
Yeah.
And this title equates to what I'm doing, but you're only giving me this. So every time I've had to fight for where I felt I earned it. Why is somebody else who's not done what I've done at this title and, I'm having to really
Yeah.
push my way through. And so I've had mentors that have helped me through this process, and I still have a really great mentor. Sadly, he's moved to the East Coast, but we still chat, and he's still there for me if I need him.
That's such an important quality or element to have in your professional life. I've had a few mentors. It just allows you to really grow. Was there a specific mentor, back to my question about your shift in how you approach situations and maybe how you even approached your role? Was there a specific mentor that was like, Monica, some of these people just don't have that
Yeah.
insight?
Well, no, it was actually my current mentor, Chris. I wanted to advance more into the leadership type role besides
Ah,
being a
yeah.
manager. And he and I had sat down and we had discussed executive presence. And because a lot of times you get to know me, my emotions tell on my face. And he taught me you need to control that because if you're angry, you don't want them to see fire shooting from your eyes.
Yeah.
You want to be able to have a nice, calm conversation with them. But back of your mind, you could be shooting daggers, but the person you're talking to would never know. He had asked me about some books and everything like that. So I had started educating myself on leadership and the principles of leadership. And I said, wow, not only can I use these principles in my work, but I can use them in my day to day life as well. I mean, when I was younger, I was a yeller. My best friend at the time came up to me, and she's still, I consider one of my very best friends, came up to me and said, hey, Monica, do you realize you yell a lot? And I go, okay. People who are comfortable enough to come up to you and say, hey, I want to give you some feedback on what I'm seeing, you have to be open to that feedback because that's the only way you can grow as an individual. You don't have to agree with them. Everybody has a different perception of what's right and what's wrong, even though to me, right and wrong is pretty black and white. But there's a way that you can change your delivery method,
Hmm.
still saying the same thing you were going to say before, but in a different way. That could be more political, productive, kinder.
Yep.
You're still getting your point across, but
Insightful.
you're putting
Yep.
it in, yeah, you're putting it in a gentle format. But you also have to let people know at the same time, especially when you're in the leadership role, that there's boundaries. That, hey, I'm going to let you know this is the areas of growth that you should look into and help them along in that process. Just because you're advising somebody, help them. Don't just say, hey, you got to go do it all yourself. To me, that's not a leader. A leader is helping your team and the people around you grow.
Yeah.
I know you and I touched on my security and myself. I want to data dump everything in my head and give it to anybody who wants to learn it.
Yes.
I don't feel threatened. If you want my position, come and take it, kind of a thing. But my whole thing is I want somebody, God forbid something happened to me, I would want somebody to fill my shoes and continue looking out for the best interests of those around me.
You're not scared of anyone taking your position.
No,
You
no,
see it as, I'm here to help you out. We're all here to lift each other up. I may,
100%.
knock on wood, go somewhere, retire.
Yeah.
Something may happen. You hope that whoever is behind you is able to step into your role.
Yes.
That's a unique perspective that not everyone shares. I commend you on that. And so that's such a great attitude to have.
When you continue to grow, and I'm still growing, I'm not going to stop growing. I continually want to learn and grow in my abilities, both in my field, but emotionally as well.
Yeah.
And to do that, I need to educate those who are going to come up behind me so they're prepared to fill the role. I want to go up. I want the people beneath me and on the side of me to go up as
Right.
well. And just because I'm helping those around me, I also can help educate my
Mm.
leaders, and provide them my perspective.
Do you think there's still an issue with executive leadership? Because this is something that we've talked about
Mhm.
even internally at MGAC or even with people around the industry. Do you see diversity in executive leadership positions? Because even here at MGAC, we take pride in our diversity and we have women on the executive leadership board. But across the industry, it's hard to really have that
Oh,
visibility and representation.
yeah.
So, what are your thoughts there?
One of the things that brought me over to MGAC when I was approached about the company, I did a lot of research. And the diversity in the executive, in the C-suite, in the leadership division of MGAC was one of the things that helped pull me over. In the construction industry, you can go online and pick 10 general contractors, look at their C-suites. You might find one or two of them
Yeah.
that have a female in a role other than marketing, administrative leadership, HR, things like that.
Yeah.
You might see one or two companies that have a woman in that C-suite where it's still very much so, and I hate to say it, a white male dominant industry
It still
in
is.
leadership.
Yeah.
In leadership. When you get down to the second and third layer, you start seeing more diversity within organizations, especially now, but it's still lacking. I mean, I hear the numbers are going up, and I think that's great. In my experience, there's still a long way to go. But in all actuality, if the people are there because of their knowledge base, great. But if they're there just because of their gender, the sexual, whatever the case may be, just to fill the spot, not necessarily that they're qualified. I want qualified
Yeah.
leaders, regardless of what their background is.
Yes.
It's to me, it's what's your qualifications? Do you fit the bill? And not judge people on how they look, how they talk, how they dress, that shouldn't have anything to do with it.
Right. A person shouldn't be tokenized in any sense of
No.
the word and shouldn't be in a role, be and to be that token, essentially.
Exactly.
And you echo the sentiments I have. I've never seen a queer Latino. I'm queer Latino in executive leadership.
Right.
I don't have that visibility. I don't have that representation. I hope that in maybe 15, 20 years, that's me. Because I'm a big dreamer, but I'm very ambitious,
Stay
but
focused. You can get
oh
there. You
yes.
can do it. Oh,
I will
yeah.
do it.
Yes,
Uh,
you will.
what you've said is just so important. I think moving past the leadership and all these items, I want to talk and kind of shift back to the workplace environment. You talked about your most authentic self now.
Yeah, I am now.
Did you ever have situations when you were younger that you faced outright sexism or even blunt
Yes.
aggression? We talked about a time where I think you've been sexually harassed on site, and also you
Yeah.
had an incident at this San Francisco meeting. And I want to
Yeah.
go into that if you want to share with our listeners.
Yeah. I mean, being in construction out in the field, you still see it sadly today where women are catcalled still to this day. And it's not just the catcalls to the women. And I've witnessed minorities being harassed on the job sites as well. And it's just not right. It's gotten better. Yes. Long way to go. Yes. I mean, I've been grabbed
Hmm.
on a job site, physically grabbed inappropriately. Now, mind you, I turn around and I deck the person that did it. It's like,
I
hey,
mean,
you're not just gonna do it. I'm gonna, yeah,
but the amount of times I've heard this on this podcast, how many women have been grabbed?
yeah,
It's despicable. I'm like, what gives someone the right? No, it's unacceptable. Glad you took things into your own hands.
yes, I do. And there's a lot of people that I've worked with and everything, and they know, I'm probably one of the most lax because growing up, being in the military and everything like that, if you wanted to belong, you had to give it back as good as you got it. And so I can give it back as, and what I would say, hey, I'm one of the guys,
Hmm.
when it was be out in the field. And I have very thick skin, and I had to learn that. I had to learn and grow thick skin. So if I wanted to be out there, I had to learn how to adapt and continue going forward. And for me, it was learning to communicate at their level and where they were coming from at that point in time back then. I mean, I still have fun and I still had fun up until recently going out to the job site and the guys knew out in the trailer because typically I was the only female out in the trailer
Hmm.
and they knew they didn't have to watch their mouth around me. But they also knew they couldn't direct a sexual innuendo at me because I'd get upset.
Because it's
And
also not right.
well, it's not right, but it's like, if they're going to banter back and forth, I'm not going to turn around and say, "Hey, I can hear you. You're offending me."
Yeah.
It's a conversation between
Between
two
the yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And too often nowadays, I think people take a lot of that personally
Mm.
when they could be having a conversation about what happened the night before and they're just telling their friend. Yeah, okay, sometimes those conversations can be taken off the job, but maybe the only time they get to see that person is on the job. And so I just learned to just be one of the guys a lot of time. I'd like to think and knowing my superintendents that I've dealt with in the past that I have their respect. Many of them said that they respected me, my opinion, my thoughts, and everything. And I love that. And I love those guys that are out in the field. Wonderful, wonderful group of human beings.
Were there ever times where you felt disrespected, and what did you do in those times? The most interesting story was the San Francisco meeting. So I
Yeah.
want, can you go into that one?
Okay, and this might come as a shocker to everybody, but this had occurred within the past 10 years. So this is,
In
I
San
would call
Francisco.
a in San Francisco, which you would think would be the most diverse, very inclusive, areas of the country. San Francisco, of all
Yeah.
places. I go into a meeting, and I'm in the city. That's what I will say.
Yeah.
And I had called this meeting. Everybody's in suits. We all go in. I'm the only female in the meeting. I walk in, and one of the people there turned and looked at me and he said, "Hey, honey, you mind getting us all some coffee?" And I just looked at him and I said, "I called this meeting. You can go get your own coffee," you know, and called him out on it. But because I was the only female in the room, he felt it was my job, but I quickly educated him and let him know that no, it's not my job. If you want coffee, you are more than capable of go getting your own coffee.
Right.
I mean, I've raised my children that you never ask somebody to do anything that you yourself, one, won't do yourself.
Yep.
Get in there and do it yourself.
You set an example professionally and personally for your family
Yes.
because your mom and your noni, you talked about you always want to set an example for your daughters and your granddaughters.
100%. And my kids' pictures, they're on my desk here at home. They're on my desk, at work, in my phone. I look at if I'm going to achieve it, I want to set that example for my granddaughters, my daughters, my grandsons even.
Yeah.
Set your sights on something and stay focused. You can accomplish it. There's nothing you can't do if you're willing to put in the work. Nothing is going to be handed to
Yep.
you. And I come from the generation that you have to work for it.
Yep.
So, work for it and you will be rewarded. And sometimes you have to fight for it.
That just is so key for me, Monica, because I mean, I'm a bodybuilder
Mhm.
and I was training for 2.5 years and I just got second place in my competition. That is, I'm not sure if
Yay,
I told you that. Thank
congratulations.
you.
No, you didn't tell me
Yeah, my
that.
first ever
Congratulations,
competition.
friend.
And also
Yes.
to, I mean, and it's bodybuilding is one of those things where it's like it's delayed gratification.
Yes.
It's not handed to you. You have to work day in, day out. So what you're saying is this is personal example can be applied to just the work environment and how you want, I guess, to really approach situations, right? I think it's setting a really good um a really good perspective and also an attitude of how you should approach a situation. Work so hard. And that's what I do now. And I appreciate you saying that. How has setting that personal example for your family, how has that translated into you being your true authentic self in the workplace? You mentioned this earlier. You said you struggled when you were younger. You said that you had to
Yes.
live up to a vision for someone else.
Yeah.
And now you asked yourself what's important. And so can you go into that?
Yeah, nowadays, especially over the past 5 to 10 years, I've really focused on where I wanted to be in my life. Prior to, my focus was being a mom, doing what was best for my family, and putting my wants and needs to the side, and being somebody that somebody else thought I should be. And about 10 years ago, I realized I had put what I really wanted in my life on hold. And all of a sudden, I had, okay, Monica, you are in control of your destiny. Be yourself. People always tell me, Monica, just be yourself. People will love you. Just be yourself. And I am. I am my true, authentic self. When I do an interview, when I talk to people, I'm not saying something that I think they want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I believe.
Mhm.
I've had friends, mentors, even people who've recommended I am my true authentic self. I will live and breathe by my morals and my ethics. When I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I'm going to do that.
Was there ever a point where, with that attitude, did you ever feel like you were ever unsafe in a work environment? Are there any recommendations you have for people who do feel like they might be unsafe in a work environment? Because that's also something that we talked about,
Yeah.
being diverse and having equality and inclusion. You never know what anyone is experiencing outside of work. So you want to
Y-
provide
y-
that safe place for in the work environment.
Yeah. In one of my prior relationships, I was in an abused, physically and emotionally abused relationship for almost 10 years. And when I went to work, it was my safe place. They protected me. They were the people that looked out for me. And I got help. If you are at work and you don't feel safe at work, find the person you can trust at work and go talk to them.
Mhm.
Or if you don't feel safe, period, at work, you really need to find somewhere else to work. But there are people that are there to help you. I mentor women who have been abused.
That's amazing.
But it's hard. Men have also been abused, and feeling safe, being able to talk to somebody about it. Everybody needs that person, and if work is your safe place, let people know, hey, this is what's going on, because they will put protective measures in place to protect you even further, and they will help you. There are avenues, and I believe MGAC does have those avenues
Yeah, we
here to help
do.
in those situations. And I'm very confidential about the people that I speak to, that reach out to me for help and mentorship in that, because believe it or not, it is a mentorship. You are helping. You're not doing anything, you're guiding them. It's up to them to take the advice or not,
Right.
and you have to accept it. If they
Yeah.
don't take your advice, you have to say, okay, it's their life.
Right.
If you are in an abusive relationship, getting out of that relationship is not as easy as people say it is. It's one of the hardest things there is.
Oh, there's just so many studies on that, but I think this is the first time in the 2.5+ years I've been doing this podcast that I think anyone's
Hmm.
really brought up an abusive relationship and being safe in the workplace. One, I thank you for bringing this up because this is something I don't really ever think about. And when you see and know more about someone's personal life, it gives you a little bit more insight of how they operate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And if they're overly emotional, if you have somebody coming into the office day in and day out and they're not meeting their deadlines all the time and they seem to be an emotional wreck and they can't seem to focus, don't get upset. Find out what's going on. Show some empathy and be there and listen because sometimes that's all they need is they're holding everything inside because they don't feel that they can talk to anybody.
Mhm.
And you might just thinking, oh, they're just having a bad day. They partied too hard. But if they are emotional or very cold,
Mhm.
there's something else going on. And sometimes having that safe place and safe person to talk to, just pulling them off to the side saying, hey, is there something? Can I help you? Is there, this is a safe
Yeah.
place. It's not going to go beyond these walls. What can I, just, I'll just listen. I won't even say anything, you know if you need a hug, I'm here to give you a
Right,
hug,
right.
but just
Because you don't want to,
be there.
yeah, you want that person, whoever is experiencing that, needs to feel comfortable enough to share it with you too. You don't want to
Yeah,
prong them and be like, I need you to tell me right now, because that can actually make the situation even
it,
worse
yeah,
and make
it
them
can.
shut down. And so that's just an interesting, and I'm really thankful that you brought this up. I think everyone having that, coming back to diversity, everyone having that different voice, that different perspective, it really goes a long way. And then you just hit the nail on the head
Mhm.
about one of the advantages of having a diverse community,
Yeah,
communication. I
yeah.
mean,
Communication's huge. Yeah. I mean, being in the industry that we're in, the more diverse people are, the better I believe the outcome because you're going to be have a lot of people with different perspective, different angles coming in, different experiences that can bring their experience to the table on what worked and what didn't work. Nobody, I don't care how long you've been in this industry, you don't have all the answers. Just because it worked for you this one time, you were lucky, you know, because this industry, if any industry changes, day to day codes change, building material changes, everything changes, and you have to, what was it you said? Fluid.
fluid. Yeah.
I think that's the word you used when we talked before, and be able to change with things and listen,
Yeah. And this is an ever evolving industry. I mean, even with AI now and just everything that's going on, I think with, yeah, as you said, materials, codes, all this is constantly evolving. You don't want to be that static person.
Right.
And I think at some point, adapting doesn't mean a bad thing. It can be just adapting to the environment. But there have been times when we have discussed in this podcast where adapting has been where you repress yourself. But here we're not talking about it in that sense.
No, no, you're not repressing yourself. When you get everybody at a table and you're discussing an action plan or a, business development plan, bring your ideas, your thoughts to the table. You might have something that nobody thought of.
Right.
Raise your hand and say, hey, I've had this thought, I've had this idea. I don't know if it'll work for us, but XYZ,
Yeah.
you know? And if people say, yeah, but that really doesn't work for us, you got it out there and you got those people thinking
Yeah.
somewhere in their head, they're thinking about it. And, that's a good thing. You were heard, your voice got heard.
Oh, it's a great thing. I think a lot of people have imposter syndrome, but
Yes.
when you're at the table, your thoughts and your voice are valued, and don't be scared to use it. I suffer from that. I don't suffer as much on it anymore. I've worked on a lot of myself to get the self-criticism away, but that's something that I hope people really come to terms that, you're at the table, you are valued. Uh,
There's a reason you were invited.
yes, and the reason why you were hired.
Yes, exactly.
I want to move into our next section of our conversation. How does your identity make you a strong asset to the team, Monica?
My experience, who I am, I very diverse background, wearing so many hats and everything like that. I don't know it all. I'm not going to. fake it until I make it know-it-all, but I have ideas and I want to hear what other people have to say. I think I have a lot to contribute to MGAC. I think I could help the company.
Where do you see the industry in 10 years?
I'm planning on retiring in 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. I just celebrated a birthday a few weeks back and going, okay, 10 years. 10 years. My husband's looking at possibly retiring in 5 and me in 10. And so we're thinking of that future on where we want to be and everything like that. But my goal is to contribute as much as I possibly can, grow as many people as I possibly can between now and when I retire. Try to help MGAC and the industry as a whole get to that next level. I'd love to see to where you walk into a building and it's not DEI. That's not even a language anymore.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You don't walk in there seeing gender, sexuality, color. You don't see that when you walk into your room. You see your coworkers. That to me is where I'm hoping will be at that time. DEI, and I think I told you about that term, drives me absolutely crazy. I think it's to the point where it's been overused and over amplified.
Yep.
My thing is just accept people. I mean, don't judge people. You don't know their story. You don't know what they've been through. Find out. Have a conversation with them. Don't judge them. It drives me bonkers. I have family members that are homosexual, that one's been married 15 years, very happy. And I love my brother-in-law, love my brother, and so proud of them that they can be their true authentic selves and be who they are.
Yeah.
And it infuriates me when I see my daughter or my nephew go through and be challenged. Thankfully, my daughter's too much like me and she'll shut people down. But,
We have that in common.
yeah, my daughters have my mouth. They will speak up, but that's a good thing. And in the same ways, it could be a curse, especially young and everything like that. But they do stand up for themselves. So I think in that regard, their father and I did the right thing by them in giving them a voice.
And a supportive environment.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like you said, this DEI, I want people to focus on the experiences.
Yes.
The perspectives that people bring to the table. And so that's where I see it in 10 years.
I want names and gender off of resumes. I want to see experience. And to me, degrees are nice. To me, a degree is a bonus, but never discount somebody for not having a degree, but having years and years of experience.
Yeah. Now it feels like you get judged and you get belittled for not having it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times, and I've seen it a lot, and I felt it being judged by not having that piece of paper saying I went through school and I did all this and that. When I talked to a college, they said, well, you can opt out of all the college courses for construction and take the tests. You don't even have to do the classes, but you do have to take math and English and everything. I'm like going, what for when I, so do you want to get some certificates and some licenses and things like that? But that's for me and my own growth.
Any final thoughts before we sign off here, Monica?
Yes. When you meet somebody, don't judge on appearance and show empathy in all situations, because you never know what that person's going through, what their night might have been at home. They might have lost somebody, but they're putting a mask on. So just be kind to everybody.
Thank you so much, Monica. And thank you everyone for listening to this episode of MJC Inner Voices. I'm so grateful for you to be on here. So thank you again. And with that, everyone, come back next month and we'll have our next episode. Thank you. Bye, Monica.
Bye, Bryan.